All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker. I'm Karen Durkee. I'm one of the librarians here and also a member of the Faculty Advocating for Commitment to Ethics Committee. And we are thrilled to welcome Dr. Siobhan Grady. Her remarkable journey began as the first woman to earn a PhD in computer science from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University in 2018. Currently, she serves as an assistant professor and program director of information science and systems at the School of Library and Information Sciences at North Carolina Central University. Notably, she heads the Laboratory for Artificial Intelligence and Equity Research, co-directs the Center for Data Equity, and holds the title of an Office e-learning faculty fellow at the same institution. A passionate researcher, Dr. Grady delves deep into the application of machine learning, targeting misinformation on social media, and enhancing fault detection in autonomous vehicles. However, her pursuits are not confined to academic corridors. She is a vocal advocate for bolstering the representation of women and minorities in computer science. Demonstrating her commitment to the future of STEM, Dr. Grady has established 6 merit-based STEM-centric, mouthful, endowed scholarships at prominent HBCUs within the University of North Carolina system, effectively easing the financial strain on deserving students. With a dedication that transcends the classroom and a vision that seeks an inclusive future, Dr. Grady continues to shape the trajectory of women and minorities in STEM. Please join me in welcoming her.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. Okay, we need to try that again. That was rough. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. That's much better because I traveled today for you, just for you, to come to this beautiful campus of Clemson University. And let me just get this set up here. And for my online folks in the back, I'm looking at you in the camera. Welcome. And we are so excited to have you here as well. And if that's not going to work, I'll just strap it on right here. Okay. All right. Now that we have that order of business out, I'm so excited to be here. You all have such a lovely campus, and I got a chance to present for Clemson actually last year. But last year I was virtual, I was pregnant, and so I'm elated to be back this year, not pregnant, and with you all in person. And so I just want to thank you so much for the invitation, for having me. And before I get started, I would be remiss. You heard about my research lab, The Layer. I have an alumni researcher here with me today. If you would please stand up, Mr. Lawson. He is now a doctoral student here at Clemson University. So he worked with me as a researcher, and he's now a doctoral student here at Clemson. And so research dreams do come true. And hopefully some of you, if you're not currently doing research, maybe you can work with a faculty member and get into that. That's a great way to figure out if you want to pursue your doctorate or what have you. Okay, whoopsie. I forgot one thing. Can't see my screen. Let's just share my screen. I got it. Okay. All right. So as we get started, the first thing that I want you to know is I'm going to be presenting to you, but this is collaboration. So I expect you to engage with me and not just let me talk at you. I expect you to talk with me, and let's get into a conversation and dialogue together. So for those of you online, if you'll go ahead and join, you can either scan this QR code. I see the students are already doing that. Scan the QR code and make sure that you stay engaged with me throughout this presentation that I have for you. That's so important as we go through this journey. I'll give everybody just another moment or so to do that. Okay. All right, so I got asked to do this talk on this topic here that you see on the screen, innovation, inclusion, and integrity, AI, a roadmap for AI in academia. And as you all probably know, I feel like a lot of you are students in this room, which is great, but ChatGPT probably has changed your world. Am I right? And so with that being said, AI has not only changed the dynamics of everything we know around us, but especially in higher education. So this talk that I have for you is more so to give you the landscape of AI, but to also hopefully forge a pathway forward together. And that's why I need you all to participate, because I don't have all the answers, but together we can forge them together. So my first question is, yes, the mic up higher, okay. Is that better? Okay, excellent. My first question is, I want to know, what is your professional background? So who's in the house? Do we have engineers in here? Health, computer scientists? What is your background? And I'll give everybody just a few moments to input their backgrounds. And true to form, as a professor, I'm keeping track of the numbers because I know who's in the room and I know how many people are online. So looking for that participation. Okay, so it looks like what I have is a lot of people who are other. You're not necessarily engineer, not necessarily someone in health or researcher, social sciences or computer. I do know we have some librarians in the house. So that might be some of what the other is. Any other thing that somebody can just shout out and tell me what your other might be that you finance? Excellent. Anything else? Information systems. All right, great. And so what do you know about artificial intelligence? What do you know about it? We're talking about a pathway forward in AI, but what do you know about this? Okay, Chat GPT. That's okay. I love this. It helps with schoolwork. It's in everything. All great things. Okay. I'm loving what I see. Very powerful data house, advanced computer programming, automate things, unregulated. Okay. I love this. Keep these comments coming. It creates things. It generates images. Scary for some people, absolutely. Bing AI, sketchy, okay. I'm really loving these responses because it looks like we have people on both sides of the house. Some people who are really loving it and some people who are like, not so sure about it. That's great. And I'll give a few more responses before I move on to the next thing. Okay, us. Okay, great, great responses. And then what I want to know now is, how do you currently perceive the role of AI in academia? What do you think? Is it a tool for enhancing research and teaching? Is it a risk? Is it an essential element? Are you unsure? Okay. So far, it looks like about half of you believe that it's a tool for enhancing research and teaching. So that's really great. But I'm also seeing 29% of you who believe it's a risk here. So I still have some skeptics. Very good. And let's see how many unsure people we have. Okay, only 8% of you are unsure. All right. And also, I want to know, what do you believe is the most pressing ethical issue in the use of AI within academia? Is it data privacy and consent, bias and fairness within the algorithms, the replacement of human roles, or is it the transparency in AI research and applications? Okay. This is where it's getting interesting. At first, we were a little bit ahead of there. A lot of you were thinking they were going to replace human roles, but it's sort of evening out. Data privacy, bias and fairness, and then few of you are saying that transparency within AI research is important. All right. So I want to start off with a quote that I really appreciate because I'm very hopeful. So you probably already know by now, but I'm an AI enthusiast. Very excited about the role AI can play in our future. And so this is a quote that I like to stick with. But every great dream begins with a dreamer. And always remember that you have within you the patience, the passion to reach for the stars to change the world. And even though AI is changing things, we are the creators, right? We are the ones that develop these things. So I'm believing that we can choose AI for good to change the world. So what is AI? I saw what a lot of you wrote about is helping things, which is great, but the way you can think about it is it refers to computer systems. And on my next slide, I'm going to give you some more formal definitions, but this is the way that I want you to think about how you can define AI. It can perform tasks for you, which it does all the time, and I'll talk about a little bit about that on the next slide. And it's in many things that you use today, every day, right? Self-driving cars have it, virtual assistants, all of these things. And we know that it is transforming industries, especially higher education. So it's really changing the way that we do things. And also want to highlight, it's changing healthcare, right? Your doctors are using this to help make predictions about diagnoses and other things. So it's really transforming things. And this is why this conversation is important, because we should be at the forefront of how we decide how these tools are used and how they should be regulated and thought of. Now let's get into the formal definitions. So if you haven't heard of something called weak AI or narrow AI, that is what's used in everyday technology. So I see a lot of you with phones. How many of you all use Siri? You talk to Siri, talk to Alexa. Those are things that use narrow or weak AI. Those are the everyday things. And those are the formal terms for them. So when you talk to people, you can say that's weak or narrow AI. And these definitions are coming from IBM. And then strong AI. This is the artificial intelligence that's more like us, more human intelligence. But you know, machines are not self-aware the way we are. They don't have a consciousness. And there's also something called super intelligence. And the way to think about that is these sci-fi films. That's what we see, where robots are taking over the world. How many of you all actually believe that's going to happen? Nobody? Okay, good. That's just sci-fi for now. But that would be considered super intelligence. And then you may have heard terms like machine learning or deep learning. Machine learning and deep learning are subsets of artificial intelligence, and deep learning is a subset of machine learning. And the way to think about this is they use something called neural nets to actually help them get these predictions and outputs. And I won't go too far deep into that, but just know that's what helps in the decision-making process for these algorithms. And then one other thing I want to point out that's not here, but you may have heard of something called natural language processing. And that's what ChatGPT uses, something called large language models, but it uses something called natural language processing to help it do what it does for you. Which brings me to generative AI. And you all hit the nail on the head when I asked you what is artificial intelligence. Generative AI actually helps create things, right? So it's going to help you create those texts, images, audio, video, all of these other really cool things that we're seeing here today, just based on what you give it for a prompt. How many of you all believe you're a good prompt engineer? Nobody's willing to put that out there? Okay, all right. Well, I hope you are if you're using it, because if you're not, then you might not be getting the right results back that you want to get. And so these are some things that you probably know if you use ChatGPT, but DALL-E, you know, ChatGPT 3, and they also have 4. And these are other ways that you can use it too. Stable Diffusion, Usenet, and AlphaFold. All these things are ways in which generative models are actually creating and developing things for us, which is quite fun. I haven't used it to create images for me. I'm still a creative in my own right, but you like how you used it for? Anybody use DALL-E to create images? You like it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I like Midjourney better.
But they're there,
And they create really great things. And a lot of this is causing some controversy, right, on who the copyright actually belongs to, which is a whole nother conversation, but it's really cool. And again, these are just applications. Of course, most of you are probably using it for text, maybe talked to some other people earlier, maybe you're using it for outlines for your paper or presentation. But whatever you're using it for, I think is great. But we're going to talk a little bit later about the role that it has in academic settings and the integrity issue that may come into play. So given what you know now as far as formal definitions and also what I presented, can you share a little bit with me about how are you currently using AI in your current role? I know some of you mentioned schoolwork, but be a little bit more specific on how you're using these tools. All right, editing essays. No, okay, don't know what that means. I try to avoid it, okay. Idea generation, great. All right, so a lot of you are using for brainstorming or outline, which is a great way to use it. And if you're not using it, don't feel bad. Maybe you still can, or maybe you will want to after today's session. Okay. MATLAB. Awesome. Okay, somebody's avoiding it like the plague. I wonder why. We'll talk about that later. Okay, great. So most everybody's using it for outlines, which I think is great, and some of you aren't using it at all, so that's fine. My job is not to bully you into using the technology, but to simply let you know its capabilities. So you probably heard a lot about AI, or maybe you haven't, but there are a lot of issues with AI. One of them happens to be the workforce of AI. Also data sets, which I'll talk about later. But the first thing I want you to know is that the field of AI is just not diverse. Okay, so here on the screen, you can see that women are underrepresented. So you know that I'm a researcher in AI, but it's women make up 6% of AI researchers and developers. Most of them are at top tech companies. And also racial minorities are also underrepresented. And then also a lack of diversity leads to homogeneous algorithms that can potentially be harmful to underrepresented communities. So current field of AI needs more people from diverse backgrounds and diverse thoughts of mind as well. Also, elite universities are what are most represented within AI. So 62% of AI researchers are concentrated at top 10 elite universities and companies. Also, when it comes to citations, citations by comparison are at the most published and highest H-index researchers are the most cited. And then most of them have top positions at the top universities and also top tech companies. And Dr. Joy, she is wonderful. She has been a true change agent within the field of AI. I don't know if you all have heard of the algorithmic Justically or Unmasking AI. She's the author of that book, but this is one of her quotes. As we humanize technology and AI, the need for ethics and diversity in design, development, and implementation has never been greater or more urgent. And I do happen to agree with her that it's never been more urgent. So here are some key challenges within AI. Some of the challenges are algorithmic bias. So some of you may have heard of that before, but essentially, when it comes to algorithmic bias, it's perpetuating some of the harmful biases that are in these algorithms. So because of that, the algorithms are flawed. And you don't want to have this happen because when it comes to algorithms, you want equity. Right? You want things to be fair for all people. You don't want when you go to the doctor, they're using these systems for it to misdiagnose you simply because it doesn't have the appropriate data or the algorithm was designed incorrectly. Also, there's a lot of lack of transparency within these AI systems. that lack of transparency makes it hard to understand how decisions are derived, how they got to that specific conclusion. And also there are data privacy issues as well. So again, collecting this data, having these large data sets, and the privacy conditions that are surrounded by it. But we can change this. We can mitigate algorithmic bias. The ways that we can do this are identifying potential sources of bias. And by the way, bias can be introduced at every stage, right? From the data collection all the way to design and also deployment. So we need to examine the data and the algorithms that are being used to train these systems. We should also increase data diversity. So a lot of times with these algorithms, it's based on historical data, which is not always inclusive of all populations and communities, which is a problem. We also need to test for the impact, make sure that we're testing these systems to make sure we want to get the outcomes that we need across different demographic groups. Also look to improve transparency. I wish that these systems, even ChatGPT, I wish that there could be some type of transparency report card, if you will. They could talk about what the limitations of the product are, because what I did share with you earlier is ChatGPT has something called hallucinations, which means it might give you something that's incorrect. But the true goal of ChatGPT is to always give you an answer. It's not always to give you the right answer, it's to give you an answer. And so we need things like transparency on these systems where when we use them, hopefully we can know what the limitations of the product are. And also building processes to allow individuals to test these decisions that these algorithms have. That would also be a way that we can mitigate the bias. And also with transparency, if we could understand how the models come to the decision that they derive at, or a disclosure of the training data that was used to train the system. Also conducting audits, that's also helpful in understanding transparency and making sure that there is documentation of the development of the process. These are all things that will make these systems more transparent to users and to all those who are interested in using these systems. Now, when it comes to privacy concerns, so some of you all mentioned that you're using ChatGPT. Do you have privacy concerns? Are you using ChatGPT 4 or 3? Or do you know which one you're using? Are you using the free version? Okay, that's ChatGPT 3. And then the paid version is ChatGPT 4. But do you know that when you give it personal information, right, it's being used. It will be out there. So you shouldn't give it personal identifying information. It's bad because you don't want other people to have that or it to be trained using your information. So there are privacy concerns. So part of that can be at the data collection start. So again, these systems are collecting large amounts of data, which can raise privacy concerns. Again, I've already kind of nailed down for you that transparency is a huge problem with these systems. A lot of times it's not transparent on data, how it's designed, developed, or its limitations. Also, when users get unauthorized access, and maybe they get access to your data, which you don't want them to do. Profiling and discrimination. Again, I talked about algorithmic bias, but a lot of times when it comes to discrimination, and I'm thinking about healthcare because I do work now in healthcare and AI, discrimination can happen with these systems. Not on purpose sometimes, but it can happen when these systems aren't developed with diversity in mind, and also data retention. And again, here are some ethical considerations or concerns with generative AI. In the bias, also misinformation. So I mentioned to you all about hallucinations. Has anybody got a hallucination before when you used it where you asked it for something? Yeah, it happens. It can give you misinformation. And if you're not doing your due diligence to do your own assessment, and you should be, because you all are scholars in education, but you should be checking behind it to make sure that it's giving you accurate information. But a lot of times it can give you misinformation. It's not 100%. again, its job is to give you an answer. Again, intellectual property, I talked about this a little bit, but some of these images and different things that's being generated, there's a lot of concerns now, especially, and I work with, I teach artificial intelligence and I actually work with a law professor. And it's getting to be a big thing on who owns the rights to the image. Is it the tool or is it you? I mean, if you put all the prompts in and gave it all the information to give you specifically what you asked for, I mean, shouldn't you have a part in that too? And then also data privacy. Again, this large data sets and giving information, you know, what are the rights of the people who are given the information? Do you all know when you sign up for these products what you're really signing up for? Or how the data that you give it will be used? And before I go to this next segment, I'm just making sure you all are still with me, because this conference, when I talk to the gentleman here, today is all about this week, right? It's all about how to include, right? So inclusion, ethics, and the things that you do. So I just want to make sure you all are still with me and kind of getting what I'm putting out here, because I know it's a lot. Let's get into the ethics of this all. So we've talked about how to be more inclusive, right? Having diversity in data sets, diversity in the teams that are building these systems, all of that. Now let's get into promoting some of the ethics of it all. You can develop or have a set of principles that you're using to guide you within the development of these systems. Also, you should always be assessing for bias. And that's how you know that you're doing a good job of thinking about all people. And you're evaluating your own work if you're in artificial intelligence or computer science or any field, and making sure that every step that you took in the process that you're thinking about, could bias have kind of happened here at some point. And then again, we've talked about before, having diverse teams, diversity of thought. Sometimes when we only, and I can say this because I've been a student once upon a time, a long time ago, as we talked in the car a long time ago. But sometimes when you're, and I'll just say this, when you're a young person, sometimes when you're in the room and all your friends all think the same, that's not a space to grow. Sometimes you want people who can challenge you and get you to think differently. And that's why diversity in teams is so important, or diversity of thought, because you want to make sure that someone else is seeing something that you're not seeing. And so here are some of the ways that you can establish principles here, right? You can have AI systems that should be acting in a manner that provides the benefit while preventing harm. This is what you should be wanting to do, or having AI systems that should avoid harm altogether, making sure they have some autonomy, and also justice. They should promote justice. You want your systems to, again, be thinking about everyone, to be fair, and to avoid that bias, and also have explainability, you know, that transparency, so that everyone who's using these systems and involved can understand them. So my question to you is, before today, were you aware of these issues? Did you know about all of them? Okay, great. So it looks like a lot of you were aware, but you lack some knowledge. Some of you say yes, but you still don't see it as an issue. So I guess that's cool. And then some of you are concerned. And I appreciate those who is new information. And again, we talked about ethics. Let's talk about inclusion now. I've already mentioned it time and time again, but that diverse perspectives, right? Seeking input from marginalized groups or underrepresented groups when you're designing these systems to avoid bias. Talked about equity, right? Making sure things are fair, that everyone can access them, making these solutions widely available and affordable for underserved communities, and having those inclusive teams, right, where you can build diverse and have that multidisciplinary. So I saw there were some different folks in the room. When it comes to these AI systems, we should have people from all over, especially depending on what they're being built for. Maybe I want to work with the librarian. Maybe I want to work with the health professional. We should have diversity of perspective and inclusive teams to help us be more efficient at what we're doing. And again, here are some ways that you can do that. Won't get into the diverse teams here, but also I'll talk about partnering with other institutions, right? There can be collaboration that happens at different institutions, having inclusive data practices, fostering that inclusive culture, making sure everybody feels a part of the conversation, that they matter. Having diverse events, which I think you all are accomplishing today and all this week, and then having leadership accountability. Right? The people who are in charge, making sure that this is something that's important to them. And here's another way that you can kind of build accountability. You can define what your goals and your metrics are. Then you can collect some data and then do some audits. Auditing is always helpful to see if there's something different happening from what you first began or set out to do. Have some transparency there, and then continuously always look to see how you can achieve better. Sorry, somebody came off. It's okay, you can cut your camera back on. We'd love to see it. And also have that continuous improvement or iterative process. So moving forward, what I suggest that we can do is have more internal audits, provide more training, right? I think education when it comes to artificial intelligence and all these things is so important. We can have it at different levels for faculty, staff, and students, because everybody might be doing a different role. There might be some students who are researching this, but there are others who are just users. And also I see this professional development. Keep looking at them because I know you all can offer some of these services, professional development as well. Because if you're not teaching your students how to use these tools effectively, when they graduate, other people, they'll be using them, and it might have them to be left behind. Maybe perhaps establishing an external AI advisory board, having other people give you input on how they think you can do what you're doing better, and also publishing some of what you're doing, whether it be reports or papers, whatever have you, so that everyone can know what Clemson is doing to promote ethics within AI in other areas. Now back to you, students. This is what you want to know. Should students be allowed to use generative AI for their homework assignments? What say you? The professors in the room, what say you? Good, I like this. Yes, I'm for it. I say yes with clear guidelines. Oh, and I see 12% of you say yes without restriction. I'm not sure. There's always restrictions, even with every homework assignment. But I appreciate your honesty. And then some of you say no, it would undermine learning objectives. Okay, interesting. Now, can generative AI serve as an effective tool for personalized learning in education? A few more, get your input in. Okay, but it looks like most of you are saying yes, but only as a supplement. And then 23% of you believe yes, it can adapt to individual learning styles. And yes, no, it cannot replace a nuance. Nothing can replace human to human interaction, I'm sorry. Even Zoom, which I love and appreciate, but the Zoom people can't feel the energy in the room. They can't see all of you all's faces, your looks of concern, some of you smiles. So they can't see all of those things like I can in the room. So nothing will replace human to human interaction. And this is a great question, but who do you believe should be responsible for ensuring that AI used in education is ethical and inclusive? Who do you think should be responsible for this? It's like most of you are saying, everybody.
Which government?
Okay, so it looks like most everybody's saying all of the above. Which is great. I think we all play a role and we all should be responsible to a point. It's great to do that. All right, now it's time for some activity. So I have two activities, but for the folks online, it's gonna be hard for you to do. Can we do breakout rooms for the folks online?
Can try.
For this, so I have two activities. The folks in here, are y'all down for some role play?
Sure.
All right, for the folks online, I want you all to do this policy draft exercise. You can put them, it's about 83 people. You can put them in maybe groups of 5 or 6, maybe. So. Yeah.
Just let me do some.
Yeah, just do it. Let's just do 6 people or 5. That's fine. Okay, so 6. No, this way. Okay. Wait, right. Oh, sorry. I didn't.
You're
realize it was a touch
touching
screen.
it,
I didn't
yeah.
realize it was touch screen, sorry. Yes, and then open. All right.
Goose.
The Canadian goose. That illegal goose some of it. Look how healthy the water looks. That shade
Oh
of-
yeah. I am confident that I would not get anything from that.
Then you'd be the first one to be over it. You'll be back to normal.
Oh yeah. Immune system goes crazy.
Emily, as a heads up, you're unmuted.
You know what? I think we could use another 2 weeks of just nothing. Uh-huh.
Flights were $100 round trip across the country.
Uh-huh.
It scares some people, dude. Let's get them there. Wear a mask.
Oh yeah. It also looks a concerning color of blue.
Emily, you're unmuted.
So the questions that we addressed were, what are the ethical considerations that we would be considering? So after discussing, we found out that we would take into consideration the demographics, which includes the race, gender, age, and moving on to the diversity, of course, diversity among the people who does the data collection or handles such huge amount of data is also a crucial point. And then we also discussed about the transparency of methodologies and data collection, which is very important. And the next point that we discussed was about to set up standards to protect privacy. So when we are working in an industry or in any situation, we work based on certain standards. So we believe that setting up some standards for privacy matters a lot. And the next point that we discussed was about who has the access to these storage. And is it stored somewhere locally or is it something stored like cloud storage kind of thing? And who has the access to all these storage? And the last point that we discussed was about the protection of intellectual property. And as we discussed in the beginning, who has the credit? Who should be credible for this? And also for the results that are being generated by AI, on what scale are you going to define the accuracy of the results? So this was something that our group has discussed. Thank
Very
you.
good.
Did you want challenging when you started thinking about the ethical issues? Was that challenging or was it easy? Let's give it a. All right, awesome. Who's gonna be the representative? Awesome.
All right, thank you. So our subject was revolving around academia, and in particular, I was the professor role, and we had several administrator, researcher, and student roles in our group. And so our first question was, how can we safeguard student privacy with AI? And so we thought that by implementing different regulations on the consumption on user data, we can help limit the personal access that people outside of the university would have. And that would help maintain the privacy of not only the professors, but the students that work here as well. And we also thought of incorporating AI into cybersecurity software into programs where it can identify threats to personal security. So for example, there could be different threats and attacks to important databases, and we can use the AI to figure out those certain attacks and learn from them and develop its own algorithms to help combat it and just make itself more secure. And we also think that developers should create warning messages when collecting data. So similar to how on the CU alerts, like there could be like a weather alert that we have, maybe we can have a different application like that through our technological devices that are registered here at the university, to where we can have different alerts for that. Like this came in, like don't open this email, or this came in, like don't use this application or software, things like that. And our second question was, what accommodations are necessary to make it sure that it's accessible to all students? And so we thought that universities should not only work with other universities, but local and federal government subsidies for school agencies. And so for Clemson in particular, we have a application called Citrix, and maybe there could be some opportunities for AI integration in that. And then the last question we had was, what measures can be taken to evaluate the effectiveness and fairness of AI usage in the classroom? And so we thought that professors and universities should collaborate to evaluate fairness across different departments. And we should also include case studies where schools using AI and have it heavily integrated, like the elite schools. They can compare it to other smaller schools that maybe don't have as much incorporation into them.
And what I love about what you all talked about was integrating some of the systems that you already have here on campus. Really great. Who's the, okay. Unfortunately, you.
All right, so one of our questions was, how do we ID and correct biases Reducing bias in admissions, my bad.
Reducing bias in admissions, okay.
But how do we ideate correct biases in AI software? And so for that question, we kind of had the idea of where you give an AI that we currently have a chance to screen these students. And from there, we're gonna have to go back as just a human element of it and check, where does it fall short? Where does it actually do a good job? And we're gonna have to have our developer change it to meet those accommodations. We're gonna bring in data sets from, wherever we can to just get the most holistic view of students and do our best job with that. But that kind of led into steps to ensure transparency. And an idea we had was just telling them, hey, we're looking at this in your application. But that kind of ran into the issue of we don't want students to just tailor their resume or their application to one or two things that seem huge. We want a student with, who's extremely well-rounded. And so we kind of angled off onto these are the kinds of things we're looking at, not the specific things we're looking for, but we want you to build your application based on, your experiences, and we don't want you to tailor it to any one or two things that, we like as a university. But we probably needed a little more time with that, just because we kind of ran into some hiccups.
That's okay, because somebody else in here has that same scenario. I can't remember. So we'll hear from you too. Great job. Thank you all. Thanks. Okay. Who's the special one? Nobody? Okay. Well, who's willing to do it? Let me ask that. Okay, thank you.
All right, so our situation was funding and ethical oversight in AI research. Our first question was what criteria should be used to evaluate ethical implications of AI research projects? And we kind of just went along with, we agreed with some of the stuff that you talked about in your presentation, how one of the big things is diversity and inclusion across the board for AI, just as a general rule. And then we went down with access to information. Somebody brought up how AI can break paywalls for companies like the New York Times, getting into companies that have a paid subscription and kind of stealing information that way. Privacy, accuracy of information, and also undercutting biases, which was a big one for ethical implications. Because if you have a bias, one of the situations that we thought of was, it didn't really go along with our proposed thing, but it was having an AI scan resumes for a company, and you have information on there, what school you go to, which is posted to a bunch of public websites of ranking systems and stuff like that. So if you have an AI looking for or sorting through resumes, and there's someone from Harvard and there's someone that went to Virginia Commonwealth, then obviously the person that went to Harvard is going to show better from a ranking bias, even though they might not have been as good of a candidate. Our second question was, how can you ensure funded projects positively contribute to society? And so one of the things that we talked about was the Baltimore Bridge collapse and using AI for a fast-paced disaster relief situation, and how that ethical implication really undercuts the bias, and obviously having they talked about having a human go back and look at the information that the AI brings up. But also with that, we talked about how funding projects, it depends on the tier of where the funding's coming from, because if it's a government funded project, then you elect officials to vote on your behalf or to vote for the funding. Or if it's a company, then it's more of a privately funded sort of thing. So it's more of a personal kind of goal for the funding. And our last question was, what role does public opinion play in the decision-making process for AI research? And that kind of just goes back to the last thing that I just said, how if it's a government-funded project, then a public opinion is up to the system that we have in place for government funding projects. And if it's a private project done by a company, then public opinion has a lot less of an impact on that.
Well, as the person sneaking in and listening to students, what I thought was really interesting, these guys were talking about their engineering major and having a code of ethics, which they were showing me, and it's like 5 areas, and it looked like you had 10 points for each area you had. And so, you know, how are they going to think about AI? That was some of the questions we were talking about, like you said, signing off on your own data. They take it really seriously. You can't, you know, risk your career.
And those are great points. Are you civil engineer? Okay. Oh, excellent. So that Baltimore, that really struck. Yeah, that's great. Thank you all. And I love the points about public and private funding. They have different initiatives, and you hit the nail on the head for that. Thank you. Can we give them a round of applause? Okay, thank you.
Hi, so our question was about curriculum development on AI, course development on AI ethics. And we had a curriculum developer over here, and we have a faculty, a skeptic faculty member over here. And then we had an enthusiastic student. And then I was the industry expert. And our questions were, how can ethics be seamlessly integrated into the technical curriculum? What are the arguments for and against dictating curriculum space to ethics and AI? And how can industry's perspective enhance the teaching of AI and ethics? We thought that these questions were really interesting and very complex at the same time. And we sort of discussed them in we just rolled them all up into one big discussion. Because we thought that developing a curriculum should include the perspectives of the students, industry experts, as well as faculty member, to sort of get everyone's perspective in there. Because at the end of the day, the industry are the end users, and education is trying to prepare or is preparing students for industry who are the end users. And so we thought that having like a capstone project, senior project in each major would be a good idea if the faculty member communicate with industries to figure out how is industry using it, first of all. And then the education professionals would sort of integrate that into that senior project in a way that students are learning the skills that they need. Maybe I'm an agriculture major, so I think that's a good example to use because it's sort of encompassing all of our majors too. Nowadays, agriculture is becoming very, mechanized, high tech. Students need to know how to use different technologies like robots that are harvesting things. So maybe industry can tell professional educators how are students expected to use AI. Maybe they need to use it to do programming, writing, what do you call those codes? And so how can these things be incorporated in the curriculum in that way so students know exactly how to use it? One of the ways we thought too could help with the ethics portion of it is when the student type in the prompts into AI, they have each member in that group say, hey, this is the prompt that we put in, this is the result that we got out, and here's how we analyze it and use it in our project. So this is going to be a part of their project too, to report on that. And the curriculum developer mentioned some good points that even like in their major developing certain things, there's a checkpoint, right? In the real world, you have to check something that you develop. You can't just, use that. So we thought that having the students check in as they go along would be a good way for,
Very good. Give them a round of applause.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So given the setting for implementing AI in the classroom settings, and we were given 4 roles. We have professor with us, we have privacy officer with us, we have an AI developer with us, and we too were playing the students. So the 3 major questions that we were given, the first one was how we can make sure to safeguard the student data privacy, which is one of the major questions we discussed in this presentation as well. So some of the key points that we thought to solve these problems were, first of all, we should limit the data that are being transported to the people, like having a person to take care what kind of data is being transmitted, having an accountability on that. The second one was using the official portals, like the Clemson portal for doing the login and other things, because in that case, Clemson can take care what kind of data is being shared with the folks that are requiring your personal data. The third point was using anonymous accounts. Like we have seen in so many websites, they ask for our details, but when it comes on sharing, they share our anonymous accounts using some different algorithms of usernames and other things. So our personal details are not being shared with all the folks. The second question that we were given was, we need to see the things that are necessary to assure that tools are accessible to all the students. So some of the good points given by all of the members of our team were, first of all, to do some kind of orientation sessions so that everyone can understand, because the major problem with these kind of things is people don't use these tools because they actually don't know how to ideally use these tools. So orientation sessions could be a good way to tell them how you can get full benefit of these tools. Others were to have some special organizations for disabled people, so that if they are not able to type things, or they are not able to communicate with the having demographical analysis so that people from different areas and regions are getting full benefit of these things. The second good suggestion was to do an assessment of performance, by which means we can assess whether human teaching have been a beneficial for the student community, or teaching with AI is a better tool for the students. So those kind of analysis can also be done in these kind of tools when they are coming for the teaching and classroom settings as well. This is what we have. Thank you.
Last week, y'all put us out of job, and I said that wouldn't happen.
Our topic was about administration of new students, and we considered categories or perspectives from an admissions officer, a minority applicant, data scientist, and ethics compliance officer. Overall, we talked about the concept of those that are creating the AI could consider diverse concepts and feed into it. That really, from AI, you're only going to pull something out of it that is what you fed into it or how it's calculating. We also considered the bias of humans versus like a human administrator or officer for admissions, versus a computer, where a computer can take millions of data points, whereas with humans, you're only using one, maybe a few people. And with humans, they can also get exhausted reading a bunch of essays, which really show a lot about a person. And so that was something we saw as a benefit with AI, is the lack of exhaustion and completeness going through all those kinds of essays. We talked about diverse information, quantifying the validity of qualitative data, asking for evidence, if we're searching for certain things within an admission essay, being able to search for those things. And then using data for high correlation of success within college from either those that have gone through college or applying to college, and really using that data. And could you possibly have customized bars to get into a university, more than just GPA, ACT? Yes, they said this one word that they overcome some weakness, but is there a way that you can customize someone's experience attempting to get into a university and having it be truly representative of their background, showing their excellence and how they might be able to come to college and really succeed?
Y'all want to talk, or do you want, okay. Okay, yes, I was gonna say, I know how time is limited.
We had the interesting topic.
Testing.
To fund AI research projects, and how do we ensure that these funded projects contribute to a broad sector of society, and what role does public opinion play in the decision-making project process? So we had a community leader, we had the sort of funding agency administrator, we had a faculty researcher, and we had an ethical review board member. So we thought that looking at not only what the project was about, but which groups were benefiting and who was involved in the research was really important criteria for funding decisions. So in places like NIH and NSF, they call these the broader impacts, but how many different sectors of identities and of society are you actually both including in the research, and that the AI research is actually addressing all these different groups. So just quick examples: are women involved in the project? Are underrepresented minoritized identities represented? Are we recruiting graduate students from all different types of identities? And then the last thing that we talked about was the importance of the community participation, and not just so much that people would be able to make public comments, but particularly, I'm a biologist, so I think about healthcare research, for example. Are we incorporating input from community organizations for healthcare, for example, to make sure that when we're doing research on making predictions about certain propensity for genetic diseases, for example, that we're really training the AI properly, so information.
Awesome, thank you. All right, thank you all for your participation with those activities. I heard a lot of great dialogue happening. Now, with that being said, all good things must come to an end. We've had a great time together. But I do believe, as you all know, the future of AI ethics is ongoing. Technology will continue to change, and it will continue to advance and grow. And I view it as an iterative process. We will always have to continuously look at what we're doing, if we're doing a good job at what we're doing, and how we can make it better. So I hope tonight that you've learned a lot about how these systems work, how you can be more inclusive and ethical in your considerations. And with that being said, what aspects of AI's future and academia excites you the most? What excites you? Is it the potential for personalized learning, the advancement of research, the opportunity to solve those complex problems, or the innovation in academic administration and operations? What's exciting you? Okay, so most of you are excited about the research, great. And next best here is personalized learning. And this is one of my last questions for you tonight. But what was your biggest takeaway? What are you leaving here feeling knowledgeable or full or excited, happy about? Okay, AI is not all bad. I appreciate that. Yes, it can be good. Okay, great, great. I appreciate this. It is, just like us. We're all a work in progress too, by the way. Yes, I love that. Working together is key. It is key. Collaboration. Most of what you do in this life, it will not be a lone venture. You will work with someone else. Very, very good. All right, keep those coming. And as you're continuing to do that, I want to give you some important information. I think those were questions you all had for me, but we'll come back to that if there are. But I want you to stay in touch. The conversation doesn't have to end. As a professor, my students all follow me on social media. I think I'm pretty cool. You can come and find out. Tell me what you think. But I'm on all the platforms. I'm even on TikTok, but I ain't dancing. So, so don't look for that. I am on TikTok, but no dancing. But I welcome you to engage with me. Add me on LinkedIn, connect with me. Just send me a note on LinkedIn if you're connected with me from this conference. Just let me know that you met me at the conference. If you're on Instagram, come follow. And I just want to thank you all for your time and attention tonight. We're actually over time and you didn't leave me. So thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Grady, for being here tonight. And thank you for, I don't know if we said this, our sponsoring organizations being the College of Agriculture, Forestry, and Life Sciences, the Clemson Graduate School, and the Clemson Library. So can we give them a round of applause for all coming together to host this session? My name is Emily Elizabeth Castlo. I'm the Assistant Director for the Rutland Institute for Ethics. I'm not just your in-house resident technologist tonight. The Rutland Institute is, I suppose, the best way we could say this is we are the TIDE Conference enabler because really we rely on our colleges and partners to make this happen. I have the privilege tonight of saying a few thank yous and letting you, especially for students in the room, know that there's ways to connect with us as well. So I want to say a special thank you. We as an institute have Greek partner organizations that have been the people who you'll see helping us work the conference, working the room. You met Audrey on the way in, and you'll also meet her on the way out. If you need attendance for a class, you're going to give her those forms or place them on our table outside. Our Greek partner organizations, we love to brag about them. They are leaders who really exemplify and are committed to ethical leadership on our campus. We have two of them. Our sorority partner is Delta Phi Lambda Incorporated, which advocates for Asian awareness and empowers women leaders through its values-based program and hopes to forge everlasting sisterhood through shared experiences. You'll also probably on your way out meet our fraternity partners, which is Beta Upsilon Chi, which is a national Christian fraternity that exists for the purpose of establishing brotherhood and unity amongst college men based on the common bond of Jesus Christ. So we're thankful for their missions and we're thankful to where they continue to serve us. we want you to all know that if this is the first time you've ever attended an event with the Rutland Institute, that it doesn't have to be your last. In fact, we really, really hope that it's the very beginning. So for students that are here tonight, I just wanted to let you know that your presence actually brings you one step closer to becoming a Distinguished Ethics Scholar. And if you're like, what is that? Our Distinguished Ethics Scholars program encourages and recognizes Clemson students, both undergraduate and graduate, who are engaged in co-curricular education focused on ethics, ethical leadership, and of course, ethical decision-making. So the program allows you not only to earn graduation regalia, so think a medallion or a cord, but it's also a co-curricular transcript that you can have. One of the biggest things I say about this program, it's the only program on campus that you can put on your resume that says, I have taken the time to invest in my ethical framework. Believe me when I tell you, that is a soft skill that is very, very difficult to prove and have evidence for, and you can do that with us. And if you're like, Emily Elizabeth, there's nothing else I would rather do than enroll in this program right now, you can, and I'm going to tell you how. Around the room, you're going to see that there are QR codes, which is actually going to take you to our link tree, including our website, which for those of you playing at home, is www.clemson.edu/ethics. All the information can be found there, but if you scan our link tree, you'll see our a link to our program, what it's all about, as well as our Instagram and LinkedIn. Connect with us. It looks really good to be connected to your school's Institute for Ethics, professionally, personally, and otherwise. So please, please do that. You'll get real-time updates right at your fingertips of everything that we're up to. You guys are going to want those. We talk about AI is bringing this in, so go ahead and have it right there in your Instagram feed. So with that being said, I will let you go, but we appreciate your time, your attention, and your commitment to ethics. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.